Record now. Okay, so taking a look at my screen, we're going to work on these quadratics that we've been talking about. And I'm going to come into my declaration section, and I'm starting to think of some variables that I might need. So somebody give me the name of a variable, something that's going to hold a value in this program. Thinking there's going to be 5 of them. Go ahead. Anybody? Bueller.
A.
A. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to make it a double. Again, I'm not at a bar, but I'm going to make it a double, and I'm going to call it A, because that does represent what it is. It's the leading coefficient of that quadratic. If I'm doing double A, I'm going to do double B, and I'm going to do double C. What other variables might I need for this program?
X.
X? Don't know if I need X, but I think I might call one of them root 1 for the first root and root 2 for the second root. Okay, so I'm going to come into my processing and I'm going to go, all right, so some of the test data we talked about. The first one, I'm going to let A equal 1. I'm going to let A equal 1. I'm going to let B equal -8. And I'm going to let C equal, and what did I say for C? I wanted that to be a +7. So right now, this is the only way I can assign values to variables, is what you see here. Okay? In a little bit, we're going to learn how to input values so that the user can enter them instead of hard coding. But for today, that's what we have. So I want to calculate root 1. Root 1 is going to equal, well, I can't put -b because the computer doesn't understand it. So I mentioned I'm going to go -1 times b plus, plus what? I want to take the square root of something, don't I? How did I?
SQRT.
MATH dot SQRT. Okay, so I want to take the square root of, now what's that thing inside of the parentheses called? What is that thing under the square root called? B squared minus 4AC is called what?
At the discriminant?
Yeah, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another variable and I'm going to call it discrim. All right, because I think this line is going to get super long. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, let's figure out the discriminant ahead of time. That was B squared, B times B minus 4 times A times C. So now that I did all that in the parentheses, I can just put discrim. Makes it a little easier. Okay. And finally, the last part.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in root 1, if I put just -a, the Java will give me an error.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this whole numerator, -1 plus b has to be divided by. So what I did is I went and put parentheses around that entire numerator. Now I'm going to go divided by parenthesis what?
2 times A.
2.
Yeah, 2 times A, or 1, no, A, semicolon. Okay, so I have my whole denominator there. I have my whole numerator there, and I think I'm looking good. End, return, root 2. Root 2 is going to be the exact same thing. Root 2 equals parentheses. -1 times b minus math.sqrt of the discrim divided by 2 times a. Okay? So far, so good. I will save this and post it as well. So just for curiosity's sake, before I put all the bells and whistles in, I'm going to go system.out.println root1 and system.out.println root2. In a minute, I can go back and add, this is this is that. Welcome to my program. I just want to make sure that it works right now. So I'm going to do a quick save. I'm going to run and compile it. Am I getting syntax errors? No drum rolls, drum roll, brrr. It's still compiling. And it ran. And it looks like I got an output of 7 and 1, which from my test data, yes, 7 and 1 should work. So it looks like my coding's going to work. I'm going to do my second set of test data. That was A was 1, B was -5, and C was 0. 1, -5, and 0. And I should get roots of 0 and 5. And when I run the program, I do. I'm feeling pretty good about what I've done. And it's nice already knowing that I'm putting in test data that I know the answer should be, that should work. Okay, questions? And again, output of 5 and 0 is really boring. So I would go through and put in the string literal. For example, I would go inside of system.out.println and do double quotes. Here is the first root. And a double quote. What was the thing I put between them? What was
Plus.
a plus? It was a plus operator, right? And again, I could do the same thing with the second one. Here is the second root and put a plus sign in it. Oh, my computer expanded. Does that make it easier for you folks to see?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'll have to remember to do that. All right, so save. And again, when I run my program, my output's a little more descriptive. Now, what else would I put in my output? Given the value of A and the value of B and the value of C, then here's the first root, here's the second root. So I could echo print my input. If that makes sense. Given input, I'm going to display it again. I'm going to echo it and print it with my output. All right, good. Any questions? Everybody's happy? All right. And again, hopefully looking at test data before we started talking about this, looking at these equations before we started talking about it, all we then had to do was type the programs. And we were all happy. All right, I saved that. And I'm now going to start back in chapter 7. Don't get excited. Chapter 2. I'm going to take all this program and delete all the code out. And I deleted all of my code out. And I'm now going to name this something else. I'm going to come up with a new program. I'm going to call it day 4. How's that? So now I'm going to do a file save as. And I'm going to save it in my downloads. And I'm saving day 4. Okay. So what's some of the stuff we might be learning about today in day 4? Let's do this. Int num1 is 4. Int num2 is 3. Down in my processing, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to do this. Int diff. I just created. What am I doing up here? Int.
Why we
Yeah, let me back up. I messed up. I'm thinking and I'm not. So I'm going to declare num1, I'm going to declare num2, and I'm going to declare not the difference, but the quotient. Sorry about that. Let's call it quo. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do processing, and I'm going to say quo equals num1 divided by num2. And when I go and display quo, somebody's going to tell me what the output is. System I run this program, what will I get for output? Anybody?
We didn't give the num1 and num2 values.
I'm glad someone's paying attention because I'm way ahead of myself. Num1 is 4. Uh-oh, my computer's all dingy now. Num2 is 3. Now you know why I can't handle the chat along with doing all this. Num1 divided by num2, what do we get?
4 over 3.
4 divided by 3 is what?
Maybe 1.5.
Well,
1.3 repeating.
actually, the answer I get is a 1. Because remember, when I divide an integer
Oh,
by
because
an integer, it's going to give me a 1. So I'm going to go up and see if this helps. What if I make quo a double? So now I
This is the
still, yeah, I'm actually still going to get the same thing. If I compile
1.0.
and run it, I'm going to get 1.0 exactly. That's not the answer I want. But num1 and num2 are both integers. Well, there's a tricky way to change this, and it's called casting. And what I can do is in front of num1, I can put the word double in parentheses, and what it will do is change num1 to a double. So now num1 is going to become 4.0 divided by 3. And this time when I run the program, I'm going to get, drum roll please, I get 1.333333. So if I ever need to do it, I can do this thing called casting and put it in front of a number, and it will in fact turn it into a different data type. Cool? All right, good.
Yep.
So that's good to know. Now let me ask you this. What if I would have put double and then had parentheses, num1 divided by num2? What would my answer be?
1.0.
Yeah, 1.0, because it would actually do that division inside of the parentheses first and then cast the answer. So be careful with parentheses in that situation. All right, good. And then let's see, what's next? All right, so we have our 4 primitive data types, okay? Int and double, there are 2 of them. The other 2 are Boolean and char, and we haven't done much work with those yet, but eventually we're going to do more work with bool and char. A new data type that we're going to take a look at today is called a string, and a string is a little bit different type of data. So I'm going to do string, and I'm going to declare a variable called name. Now, what happens with string is it doesn't say like int. We had a discussion int. Uh-oh, I want to reference num1 is going to go, and there's going to be 4 bytes of memory reserved for me to store num1. String is a little bit different of a data type. I can create a string that looks something like this. So my string is name, and I can say name gets a value of, and this idea of string is familiar. I'm going to put it in double quotes. My name is Ray J. Johnson Jr. It's not my name, but that's an old Saturday Night Live skit. Okay, I can actually assign to this string a string literal. Now you notice the length of it was pretty long after a while, so it didn't know how much memory to use. Well, string is a little bit different than our primitive data type. It's a reference variable. When I say string name, what gets stored in name is just a memory address. Then when I go and say name equals Ray J. Johnson Jr., it will store each one of those characters starting at that memory address. So I don't know the actual length of it when I go to store it, so I only store the address. Nothing you have to worry about. We're going to talk about it more and more, but that's how a string data type works, and it's different than our primitive ones. All right, so you've seen some string data types when you typed up your code listings, and you know, if I was to make some notes at this time about my string data type, just like there was a function for the math class, you know, math.square root, there are actually functions for strings. And I think there's 4 of them listed in the book. What were those 4? Methods that I can use to do things to my strings. I'll get you started. Length was 1.
Uppercase.
Yeah, was it 2 uppercase?
Yeah.
You notice how that is written as camel case. And then there was 2 lowercase. And then there was 1 more. Charat?
Yeah.
Charat. Okay, good. All right, so let's first of all take a look at length. And when I say length, I'm going to get an integer, and I'm just going to call it len. So down here with my Ray J. Johnson Jr., I'm going to say the len is, and how to name dot length. Does that sound familiar?
I think you're missing the parentheses.
Okay, so we'll find out if I need them or not. So I'll put the parentheses in. Now I'm going to come down here to my system.out.println, and I just want to print out the len. What should the len be of Ray J. Johnson Jr.? Anyway, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
18.
18, I thought I got 17. 4, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Well, we'll let the computer do the work. Computer says the actual length is 18. Very good. Okay, the length is 18. Now, 2 upper, we know how that works from the code listing, 2 lower. But here's another one that's kind of important. I want to know, and here's one of my other primitive data types, char. And I'm going to put ch, okay? It's going to hold a character for me. I'd like to know what is the character at, so I'm going to go name dot char at, because I'm going to work with name. And I'd like to know what character is in the, give me a number between, just give me a number, a single digit number.
9.
8. Okay. So I'd like to know what is at 8. So I'm going to do system.out.println, and I'm going to print out what that char is. So if I get ready and run this, what do you think it is?
G.
A capital J?
Yeah.
Capital J. I heard a capital J. All right, if I run it, I'm going to see 18 and then a capital J, and I do in fact see a capital J. All right, so let's figure out what is at 8. When we are doing the length, we count the actual length. When we are doing char at, we don't start at 1. Because if I said, what's the char at 1? A lot of you may be thinking that when I run this, that first capital R is going to be displayed. But in fact, little a is displayed. So char at works starting at 0. So for this function to work, and I want to get that capital R, I'd say character, because I want to store just a character. I want to go to the string name, and I want to get the character at position 0. And if I run it and print it, you're going to see that a capital R displays. All right. So I have 4, and again, you could get on Google and you could type Java class string, and you could get all kind of methods that you can use. And you notice for the strings, I use the name of the string. In this case, I called it name, followed by a period, followed by the method name, and then parentheses. Sometimes the parentheses are going to be empty. Sometimes the parentheses are, in fact, going to have a number in. Questions? I'm saving that. I'm going to stop the video. Stop. I'm going to come back to the screen. And I see we still have 5 minutes. So we have now covered up through section 2.9. We already did some comments and some other things. So what's the future look like? Well, the future is bright. No, I'm just kidding. Future is cloudy today. Next Monday, we do not have class. So next Wednesday, we're going to be doing sections 213 and 214. And we're not going to do very much with 213 because 213 is working with our output down in that little console window. And that console window at the bottom where we were just looking when our output appeared, that's more for the programmer. We're going to be looking at how to start to display output for the user. So when they run a program, they're going to see GUIs pop up. So next Wednesday, we will be looking at finishing up chapter 2 with that section 214. Now, Wednesday is the 9th. That's our first test. What we'll do, oh, excuse me, that's our last lesson for chapter 2. I apologize. That's the last lesson for chapter 2. Monday the 14th, we're going to start chapter 3. And then Wednesday the 16th will be our first test. So again, next Monday we don't have class. Next Wednesday we'll finish chapter 2. The following Monday we'll start chapter 3, but then that Wednesday will be our first test, and it'll only be on chapters 1 and 2. Make sure you fill out that terms and acronym sheet because there's going to be acronyms on there. I already told you ASCII is going to be on the test. Okay? And then I'll give you more information about the test when we get a little bit closer. Questions, sports fans? All right. So we have 2 weeks down for this class and 12 to go. I will see you next Wednesday.
Have a great day.
Yep. Have a
All right,
good
thank
weekend.
you.
Right,
Thank you,
right.
Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Yep. See y'all.